Ms. Brooks, can you take him out because I'm going to start this Zoom right now?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Lynch, tell, no problem. Tell brother Matthew, I'd like to speak with him, but I have to take the Zoom first.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Brother Dave. Good morning, Miss.
Stop the recording. Stop. We're not ready yet.
Okay. Okay, so today's date, August 15th, 2023, about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm here with the illustrious Dominican agriculture economist and nation builder, Dr. Dave Shillingford, a grammar school boy, as someone who, after his retirement, focused a lot of time on the development of the Botanic Gardens website. Married to Margaret Kerr for about 55 years with 3 wonderful children, all 3 of whom we are well proud of are physicians here in the United States. But Dave has dedicated this time, especially during retirement, to the development of our island home. Good afternoon, Brother Dave. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. Doing okay?
Dave, I'm very happy that maybe almost 25 years ago, we got to meet through the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences, of which you are a member, started by one Raglan Rivera with able support of a guy by the name of Gabriel Christian and many others, president of which was your cousin there, Dr. Clayton Shillingford, who we spoke to a moment ago. And in later years, you dedicated a lot of your time as the tip of the spear, so to speak, the lead guy in the development of the Dominica Botanic Gardens website, which was one, of the best websites of any botanic gardens we knew of in the world, certainly in the Caribbean. And so I'm going to ask a few questions about your life and then go to the gardens, which is the focus of our discussion, because in recent days on Dominica, a lot of questions have been asked about the gardens because of plans that have been discussed in Parliament by the wife of Roosevelt Skerritt, who's also Member of Parliament for Roseau, Melissa Skerritt Popon. That includes a miniature golf course, a creative arts center, a cinema, restaurants and shops. I've heard talk about a skating rink and a water park and so on. And many people, including myself, believe that those plans are inimical to a botanic garden space, which is very limited, and that those kinds of project development plans should be better placed elsewhere. That we should preserve the gardens for plant science, research and development, and for the original stated purpose, the study of botany and the education mission that accompanies that. So Dave, tell us where you were born and when were you born?
I was born in Roseau in 1940, and I attended the Dominica Grammar School.
Yes, yes.
I did tell you whether
before the grammar school, where did you attend school?
I went to school at Montessori and mixed school.
Indeed.
Mixed school, and I got a scholarship from the mixed school to go to the grammar school.
Yes. Tell me a bit about your grammar school experience.
At grammar school, you know, I was interested in botany, and I was interested in agriculture, and I got an agricultural scholarship eventually. I did fight, worked quite hard, I should tell you. Yes, I got a grade 1, the only grade 1 in the island that year. And well, no, I shouldn't say the only grade 1. There was one more grade 1.
Who was that person?
It was a girl, Marlene Green.
Marlene Green. Is that a famous Marlene Green that later went to Canada?
Yeah, that's she.
Okay. And she attended the convent high school?
She attended the convent high school.
When you were at the grammar school, were you also a cadet, Dave?
Yeah, I was a cadet. In fact, interestingly, I was a cadet.
Yes.
And I was what do you call it, CQSM, called a master sergeant.
Outstanding.
And interestingly, I tell my kids, I used to march at the head of the cadets going into the gardens.
Indeed. So the gardens there has a very special place in your life. How special was the Botanic Gardens in your day?
In my day, it was very attractive. You know, there were rose beds. There was sugarcane plots. There was coffee, cocoa on the hillsides, apart from the attractive part of the lawns and the cricket fields at the first part of the gardens. It was a fairly attractive place, and we would go there to study on the benches that they had there. Yes. And I remember, almost throughout my career, that's where I played, I studied, and I enjoyed the environment there in general. Yes. And on top of that, many other people did enjoy it. Yes. Children with would come and play themselves. I played with several guys in the gardens, and some of it was the guards came and they harassed us, but it still came back to play.
So you're saying, Brother Dave, that security in the gardens was at a high level. You were not allowed to do what you want. Tell us about security.
There was a guy called Horatio, and he had a dog, and he would come and the dog could come at us. He would send the dog at us, we would run away. But yes, as young boys, he never traveled that time. We talked to him, in times when we were not playing in the garden, we were not spoiling the grass. He would talk to us, and we would, he said, he'll send the dog after us again.
Yes. So Dave, let me ask you this. In the gardens, there was a certain time you could come in the gardens, and there's a certain time you had to leave. Is that correct?
You had to leave, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was that? Was that 6 p.m., 7 p.m.?
As about 6 p.m. or sunset. I'm not too sure which one it was, 6 p.m. or sunset.
So after 6, sorry, go ahead.
After 6 p.m., the gates were closed, and you couldn't get into the gardens. Yeah. At least, when I say you couldn't, you were not allowed to get into the gardens when the gates were closed around 6 p.m.
And one of the reasons, Dave, was that at the back of the gardens was a plant propagation center that I remember as a child. Yeah. What kinds of plants that were propagated there? It was a propagation center to propagate plants that would be distributed throughout the island to farmers, large farmers or small farmers, but it was that area, that part there, that it played as a distribution center. And the plants were things like cocoa, definitely, of coffee. They had coffee growing, but it was primarily, there were lots of different plants that were sugarcane was prepared there. Yeah, the cuttings of the cane were sent out, but it was really for farmers who needed just different types of crops. But cocoa in particular was in its ascendance at that point. So Dave, you're saying you got a grade 1 at your Cambridge exams in agriculture science, is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
And who was your teacher at the grammar school, if you remember?
I remember, not Peterson Pedock, that's my chemistry. Lots of our teachers came from the other islands. I don't remember. I remember the faces of our chemistry teacher, of our math teacher. There's Bascom was one from Guyana.
Clayton told me there was one by the name of Piggott who taught chemistry. Is that right?
Piggott taught chemistry, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So when you got out of grammar school, you taught at grammar school for a while, right?
Yeah.
And then you got a scholarship to ICTA, the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture.
Yeah, I did agriculture there.
So that was your first degree?
My first degree, yeah. And from there I came back to Dominica and I worked in the agriculture department.
When you worked in the agriculture department, Dave, where was your office?
Was in the office next to the forestry department, the current forestry department. There was a bigger office next to the forestry department, and that's where my office was, right next to the forestry department. But I think that office, that place there has been blown down by a hurricane.
Okay, and where was that located, Dave?
Right in the gardens.
So Dave, hold on for a second. You're saying to those who listen to this tape that after you went to grammar school, graduated, taught there for a while, went to the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture in Trinidad, came back to Dominica, your office was actually within the bounds of the gardens.
It was in the gardens, right next to where forestry today was.
Tell us about
yeah.
Tell us
about the gardens. Well, No, I stayed in the office and then I did my research out in the field.
Yes.
I had researches for feeding bananas or reject bananas to pigs. That was one. There was another research on fertilizing oranges, because oranges are becoming kind of interesting and popular then. So I did these experiments and I wrote them up, gave them to the chief agriculture. That was Yankee.
That's J. Bernard Yankee.
That's Yankee, yeah.
Who had a PhD from the University of Wisconsin at Madison in agriculture.
That's he, yeah.
And was he also at that time the director of agriculture?
Yeah, he was chief agricultural officer.
And he was a Dominican?
Yeah, definitely.
Went to grammar school with you in Clayton and so on?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, Brother Dave. So you're saying when you returned from ICTA in Trinidad, with your bachelor's degree in agriculture, you were doing research in the gardens?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, hold on a while. My office was in the gardens, but my research was in the field.
Yes. But what I'm saying is the research center was located in the gardens. You go out, you'll come back and bring the material back. I guess what you call the results of your field work would be collated, analyzed, prepared for the Ministry of Agriculture within the gardens.
Yeah.
Did you also have a library in that center as well?
Yes, there was one. There was one, particularly in the forestry department.
Yes, indeed. And what kind of material was there? What kind of reading material was in that library?
I didn't use it very much, but the material there were reports that had been written, and in the agriculture department, in the offices of our agriculture department, there are the reports which had been written about growth of various crops, about fertilizing various crops, and the various types of trees in the forestry in particular. It wasn't a big library, it was a small, small stuff,
Yeah. But the point, Brother Dave, was that within the library, within the gardens was a forestry division and a research division which had its own library with historical reports over the time that the gardens had been in, let's say, process.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
How important do you believe to a country is a research and development center within the Botanic Gardens?
I think it's important for providing the information that farmers and agronomists and botanists need. It should be a center of where you keep that sort of information, because that's where you would look for it right there. So you'd keep copies of those reports in an institution like this. You wouldn't have it in the general library. You'd have copies of the reports in the general library, but more particularly, you'd need it in the offices of the agriculture department.
Dave,
specific to agriculture.
Thank you. Dave, there came a time in 2000 that the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences was formed, and you were one of the first members. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was one of the first members. Yeah, in terms of the initial grouping together, I think it was Raglan and yourself, or whoever it was, Clayton. I think that started. But a little later, I got involved because there was some need for somebody who had some sort of agricultural background to do the botanic gardens. And I said, okay, I'll do it.
Indeed, indeed. And Brother Dave, we just want to thank you publicly, I mean, you've done it privately, for your immense effort and your noble effort, because all of this was voluntary. Am I correct?
Yeah.
You didn't do this. I'm sorry.
And Clayton helped me and Raglan helped me.
Yes, yes.
And we got it together, and it's still a good place, I can tell you that.
And you're talking about the Dominica Botanic Gardens website, which is online right now.
Yeah. I was just looking at it a moment ago.
And Brother Dave, I've had occasion to hear from you that you've heard from different countries. Give us some of the countries that have contacted you about the gardens.
Yeah. People from Brazil, for example. I remember clearly from Brazil. Other individuals from, there's an interesting case. from one of the Middle Eastern countries or the East European countries. They wanted for me to give them the authority to translate what we had on the website. So you can translate as much as you want.
Yes, yeah. Was not Ukraine, was not from the Ukrainian national.
Ukraine, yeah, Ukraine, it was Ukraine, yeah.
Indeed. I remember that about 10 years ago that you
Yes,
contacted.
about that time, yeah. In fact, I sent it to you. I must have.
That's right. You sent it to me for legal
Yes.
analysis. Yes, indeed. And you've also gotten contact from researchers from Kew Gardens in England.
Kew Gardens, yeah. Mhm.
Kew Gardens is the biggest botanic gardens in the world. Tell us the role of Kew Gardens in the development of the Dominica Botanic Gardens, if you will.
You mean our the Botanic Gardens?
Yes, sir.
Well, what happened was that Kew Gardens was setting up because of the relationship between England and Kew Gardens and the colonies, the British colonies. They were setting up satellite botanic gardens throughout the world, doing two things in particular. One being having an ornamental section and another section where economic crops were illustrated.
Commercial botany, they call it.
Commercial, okay, yeah. Mhm. And was illustrated, and Dominica became part of that too, part of that process, because you had some of the Englishmen who were there, and through one means or another, they developed the Botanic Gardens. Joseph Jones was the guy who was particularly instrumental in expanding and developing the gardens. You had one or two other individuals who actually started the gardens, but the guy that actually, brought the gardens to his apogee, whatever you want to call it, yes, was Joseph Jones.
Indeed.
And then it got the reputation of being one of the best gardens in the Caribbean and possibly in the world.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking at Wikipedia. It's saying here, the Dominica Botanic Gardens is located on the Caribbean island nation of Dominica, the capital of Roseau, once known as one of the finest botanical gardens in the region.
That's correct.
And it goes on to say the Botanic Gardens was established when Dominica was still a colony of the British Empire, and the Crown government began planning the gardens in 1889 with the goal of encouraging crop diversification.
Yeah.
And to provide farmers with correctly propagated seedlings.
Yeah, that's it.
16 hectares of land, formerly a sugar plantation within Bath Estate, was sold to the government in 1891 by the owner, William Davies.
Yeah,
it goes on to say that planting of the gardens began in 1890. Its first curator was Charles Murray of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Edinburgh. He was soon replaced by Henry F. Green, who planned and laid out the gardens, and Joseph Jones took over management in 1892 and remained involved throughout his life. So Jones dedicated the remainder of his life to the garden. Yeah. So should we have a statue or some sort of nameplate to commemorate those persons who made that sacrifice?
I would say a guy like Joseph Jones is worthy of that, because during his lifetime, the gardens went from just, forest or close to forest, and it expanded a full 40 acres. And Joseph Jones was the guy that was responsible for the gardens as we know it, the ornamental section and the economic section. And he is buried, incidentally, in the cemetery at the Morn. There's a military cemetery at the Morn where Joseph Jones is buried right there. And I think in our document, we show it. I think I have it here. We show a picture of the burial place where Joseph Jones is, right at in the military cemetery there. It's about, I would say, a quarter acre or half an acre. And I don't know what's happening to it right now, but it's a place that I think we should. These guys were white guys, but they made substantial contribution to what's happening in Dominica. I mean, we shouldn't be reluctant to give them the credit they are due.
Indeed. And so how important, Brother Dave, is that sort of preservation of not only the botanic sciences, but the heritage of those who made worthy contributions like Mr. Murray, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones gave his life, the rest of his life, to the gardens. How important is that heritage preservation?
I think this is important, you know, with respect to the gardens in particular. I think the same principles would apply, you know, on in any context of heritage. But with respect to the gardens, for us to let it go, you know, and do anything other than enhancing it and bringing it back to its old culture, old level, I think would be untenable. I think we should not let it just slip away like this and go out into the sunset. You know, it
Dave,
should be something that we can easily fix up.
Dave, how important it is in the development of the gardens, not only preserving but promoting it, is consultation with Dominicans like yourself and others who are trained botanists and agriculturists and heritage preservationists. How important is that sort of collaborative?
I think this is happening. Take soccer, for example. That's a very good analogy. The Jamaicans playing soccer today are picking up their soccer players from all countries in Europe so that their level of soccer is enhanced by the training that they get in England and that they transmit to the Caribbean. They go back, they're born and bred in England, but they're Jamaican heritage. The point I want to make is that individuals like myself and yourself and other individuals who have got training in North America or in England have a significant contribution to make in terms of the skills that they have, the experiences that they have, the exposures that they have. Many people have traveled all over the world, and you know they have experiences that they can contribute to a small island like Dominica. And I would hope that the Dominicans can realize that and not be intimidated by these guys that have made contributions in other countries, and we can continue to make contributions to Dominica also.
Today, from 2000, thereabouts when I first met you, to 2023, that's 23 years. You've dedicated your life in retirement to the maintenance of the Botanic Gardens website, and before it was under the Academy and then it was separated. How important was that volunteerism with yourself and Raglan and Clayton, Allington James, Major Francis Richards, and the others who contributed and gave information to you? How important was that to do? And what drove you to do that?
Well, what drove me to do that is that I saw a place like Dominica that needed that sort of input, and I could make a contribution. And I think it was incumbent on me to contribute to the country from that where I was born and where I was brought up and where I have very good memories of. I didn't think about doing it in any other context, but in that context, I have very good memories of Dominica. I go back there for holidays off and on.
Yes. And
I think that what I could have done is help with the Botanic Gardens website. I gave a lot of time to it, and I was focused on it all the time. I didn't have any other interest that I wanted to make as much a contribution to that Botanic Gardens website. I think that what motivated me was that we had such a gem, and before too long, who knows that the gem might disappear, or that we have an opportunity. I had an opportunity of putting down or annotating or making it known what kind of wonderful place that we had in Roseau.
Indeed. Brother Dave, in way of, you hear about green spaces, you hear about climate change, you hear about the importance of tree life or plant life in sort of producing oxygen and, abating sort of the rise of too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. What role does that green space in Roseville play? Coming from a perspective of someone who's trained in agriculture and in plant science.
I can use the analogy of Los Angeles. They have little green space there. There's lots of cars, lots of fumes from motor cars, and the place almost became uninhabitable. And then they began being a little more concerned about how to control the environment, and it was changed. In our case, we haven't got to the stage where the fumes from motor cars and manufacturing affects us, but the role of a botanic gardens, of a good plant space, an attractive place, is important. And you can say, for example, one can say it's an exciting window into the island, not only because we are a nature island, but because it's a museum of tropical and economic crops. It could be an asset to the tourist industry, and people come in there to see what various tropical crops could look like. People that have never seen these things, and how beautiful the environment would be if we could just maintain it and develop it. It teaches the appreciation of nature, and for our nature island in particular, it would lift the intellectual level of the people, of the population as a whole, an intellectual level that appreciates nature, right? And doesn't do anything to destroy it. They would love it. That is the business of enhancing the individuals of the population as a whole. People would love it, and they would understand what protecting nature is all about. Here's a gem that they can protect.
So Dave, you're saying that preserving the gardens is not simply about plant science for plant science sake, but maintaining the different plant species and the propagation of those plants, but also, in your words, lifting the intellectual level of the community.
Yes.
And enhancing their understanding of conservation and its importance.
Without a doubt, that's the point I'm making. That's necessary for people to come in, and instead of driving on the lawn and wrecking it, for them to appreciate, no, you can't do that. As a population, appreciating it.
Indeed.
You get my point?
I do. I get your point. And, this is your interview. I don't even want to talk about my time as a cadet in the gardens, or as a child, because I lived on Boyd's Avenue next to the gardens, how majestic it was. And so as I look forward, Dave, and we want to maintain our nature island or nature island image, how important do you believe is preserving those important facets of the library and enhancing it in a way not to destroy the original intent?
I think you have put it correctly, that because we haven't dealt with it constructively for several years, it still needs enhancing. It definitely. I have been there earlier this year. I was in Dominica and I was in the gardens. It needs enhancing. There's no doubt about that. But the logic of enhancing it is that it will be there for posterity. It will be there as one of the best botanic gardens in the region. I mean, there's nothing like that in Martinique or Guadeloupe or Grenada or all these other islands. There's nothing like that there. And we have the opportunity of, as a little island, of using that resource to enhance, our being in the environment there, making it a pleasant place for people to live and enjoy nature.
Indeed. Dave, I very moved and inspired, and I think all Dominicans should be very proud by the efforts you made to develop the Dominica Botanic Gardens website, which continues to be a place where many people go to learn about the history of the gardens. It needs to be further developed also because you are getting on, I'm getting on, and we need people who are more IT, that is information technology savvy, to manage the thing and upgrade it. Before I ask about any final words, when you left ICTA, you also did further study. So where did you go to study after the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture in Trinidad?
I went to Cornell to do an MS in Cornell. I did it fairly well. And the professors agreed for me to go into a PhD. And I stayed there for 5 years. 2 years I was doing an MS and 3 years for a PhD. And before I left, I was in the Phi Kappa Phi Society, where they bring in individuals who have made contributions or really have distinguished themselves on campus. That's what I did. When I came back, and I didn't get a job in Dominica because they didn't have a position for me then. So I went to CARICOM and I worked in CARICOM for 3 years. I enjoyed my work at CARICOM. I traveled through the region. I saw places like Belize, Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, all these islands.
And then, of course, you met your wife in Jamaica when you were at the hospital in Jamaica. And when you went and you saw your wife, you got better right away.
Yeah, definitely. I had a bad leg from a cock ball that hit me on my thigh, and it was hurting me. Okay. I went to the hospital, I was lying down in the bed there, and then she was taking care of me, and the cock ball shot got better. It stopped hurting me. I don't know whether that is just a matter of mind over matter, but the result was what was interesting. And that time I told her that she did voodoo. She voodooed me.
And that is the charge nurse at University Hospital Mona. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it.
And that's Margaret Kerr of Jamaica.
Yeah, Margaret Kerr. Yeah.
You had 3 wonderful children with her.
Yeah.
And they're all physicians, Brother Dave.
Yeah, they're good kids. When they were young.
Give me their ages. Give me their names, Dave, and the areas of practice.
There's Saidi Shillingford, SAIDIA, and she is internal medicine specialist. There's Carl, that's a surgeon, KHL. KHLIL. I call him Carl, so it's KHL for me. And there's Carl now. Carl is a surgeon. And he specializes in, what the hell is that term he uses? All these people are surgeons and specializing in one way or the other that I'm unfamiliar with.
General and
Obesity surgery. So he goes inside there and he cuts your stomach and he ties it back up.
And what about
the last one is a heart surgeon. He's a heart surgeon, and he's a professor of something or the other where he works. And he's a good guy too. These guys are skilled like hell, man.
And I was told by you that you and Margaret, if they got an A in the class where they got $20, if they got a B, they got $10. And if they got a C, they got a scolding.
They got nothing, man. They didn't. The lack of any encouragement was the element of the scolding.
Yes, he did.
I didn't have anything to say about it. And they would call me in my office. When they got a B or anything like that, they would call me in my office so I don't get vexed.
Yes. And Dave, you went on to become a senior executive at General Motors in quality management.
I was manager of a truck analysis, truck competitor analysis, comparing our trucks with other international trucks and identifying the character of the other trucks that made our trucks either better or less than the international ones. And to do that, I went to places like I went to Tokyo. I went to Tokyo twice to look at the foreign trucks. The Kia and all the trucks. I looked at things in particular, trucks, and I would come back and report on the differences I saw, what made those trucks better than our trucks. At first, they didn't worry about that. They just wanted, to reduce prices, but that never worked. They had to, after a while, they realized that they had to inject quality into those cars, and then GM began coming back up. But that's how it is in those days.
And Dave, you are a student in total quality management of a gentleman by the name of William Edward Deming.
Yeah, Deming.
1993. Did you ever meet him?
Yes, I met him.
Amazing.
Because at GM, they would bring in these experts to talk about their areas of competence. You see, this is the Dominica situation analogy, which is appropriate. It is that they would bring in experts to General Motors so that they can teach General Motors the new technologies that are coming onto the horizon, and that we could possibly look at it and come to conclusions about whether we can, implement it or not. And I met this guy, Deming, and he's a very cool and casual guy. He told us about his work in the US and how it was not appreciated at first, and how some of his students went back to I think it was
Japan, wasn't it?
Japan. Went back to Japan. And when they were there, they began implementing his quality control processes. And that improved the quality of Toyotas and other Asian products. And that the processes spread throughout Asia. So that allowed the Asian products to improve their quality to the point where they began competing, successfully with the GM cars and the GM and the Ford and other GM manufacturers. And as a result of that, the General Motors began implementing more aggressively the processes that Deming suggested.
So let me stick a pin in that there.
My analogy is that GM saw the first of all, the contribution of GM was originally just dismissed. But when
the contribution of Deming, Deming.
All right, you're right. Deming, my apologies. Was originally dismissed. But then when they realized that his processes were correct, they began implementing them. They changed their mind and they began implementing them. But they went, Deming brought his processes to the US, and the US applied them. It's the same thing that Dominica has a whole set of people like myself and yourself who are all over the place doing very well. And they can benefit from having the input of some of these people in their manufacturing or agriculture or agronomy, whatever it is. They have to learn not to be intimidated by people like us that have done very well and use our intellectual input, just like how GM used Deming.
Indeed. And I just want to say that I endorse all that you've said, because it's the whole issue of profits are never welcome in your country. Deming, you introduced me to Deming, and I thank you for that, because you expanded the circumference of my knowledge. And I discovered that Deming was a professor at Harvard University. He was teaching Asian students, including Japanese. They took his principles, brought it to Japan. Japan, as an automotive engineering power, began to rise. America, or the United States, as an automotive engineering power, began to decline.
Relatively.
Relatively. And then you went to Japan, observed what they were doing with Deming's principles, and brought them back to GM.
Yeah, more or less.
And GM now began to see a renaissance, to the point that GM now is quite formidable. And that has a lot to do with one Dave Shillingford of Dominica. So I want to say that I compliment you and your team for that leadership.
I don't want to take the honor for all of that, but you know, as a small cog in a relatively big cog like big machine like GM, I did give them the benefit of my knowledge and observations in Tokyo, and they implemented some of it.
How long were you with GM, Dave?
Oh, 25 years, man.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
25 years. A good place to work.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I enjoyed working there.
Indeed,
You know, I used their cars. I used to bring home some nice cars, and the kids loved that. You know, like Corvettes and so on. I would bring them home, and I would test them. You know, they gave it to you for you to test, and all my kids were excited about, you know, daddy's Corvette, and I said, well, all right, look at it and try it, but don't crash it.
But Brother Dave, as we wrap up, I really want to say that behind every great man is a great woman. And I had the honor and privilege of meeting Sister Kerr. And so I'm going to ask you for a few words on the Dominica Botanic Gardens, and then I'm going to maybe ask Margaret Kerr to say a few words as we close out.
She's not here, by the way.
Okay, okay. I thought I heard a little bit of a helper's voice.
I didn't get a guess, but she gave me the, okay, I'll see you later.
Okay, good. Well, Dave, any final words on the Botanic Gardens and its future?
I think I've made my points quite clear that we shouldn't let it go astray. We shouldn't let it, you know, deteriorate. It is not in the kind of, it's in a sort of state that is, everybody else is improving their Botanic Gardens. Everybody else is recognizing the importance of green space in cities, and they're doing something about it. Look at Jamaica and Hope Gardens. The Hope Gardens was falling upon hard times. The Jamaicans came and they are bringing it right back up. And now there is even more interest in botanic gardens throughout the world. And we should use the opportunity for us to get our gardens back up to scratch.
Indeed, indeed.
It's possible.
Indeed. And what should the role be of overseas Dominicans and local Dominicans working together? How important is that for national pride and national development, for that collaborative?
In terms of collaboration, that is, unless Dominica can have all the technical skills that's necessary for them to improve their gardens and their agriculture and their tourism, there's a lot that we in the diaspora can do. We in the diaspora can, for example, what was I thinking about recently? There was something I was thinking about, you know. Well, what I observed was that in Dominica, there are lots of things going on that you know, like housing to some extent. I see the new housing going on, and that was quite interesting for me. The roads, I think the roads, you know, joining one part of the island in the next, I think that was also quite good. I was disappointed with the gardens. I think that they haven't made any substantial strides there at all. The various hotels, and I was at what's his name again? At Fort Young, when I was when I came back from Trinidad, I would go to Fort Young off and on and have drinks there. Fort Young is still quite a nice place, and but I see that they are expanding also. What else again? You know, I saw the road. I used the road going to Scott's Head, but I was surprised to find out that they were charging me $2 for me to just go and walk to Tusab, where I would go as a little kid. And go to the mall on top, the top there. I was quite put off a bit. I said, you know, they're charging me $2 for me to just go and see for 10 minutes and coming back down. But you know, when people need some cash here and there, you cannot. They use every opportunity for them to, you know, to make to do business, and that might be one business that they're involved with. But I was disappointed in Tusab itself. There's too many rocks there. It never was a rocky place like how it was when I was a kid.
So essentially, Dave, you're saying that we should do a better job in things like reforestation.
yeah. On, let us say, the Scott said point, Kashaku, that narrow isthmus that's there, that when I was a kid, they had lots of trees there. There were manchineel trees, coconut trees, seaside grape trees were there, and there was a wild a wild leguminous plant that was ground cover, and that protected the island, protected the isthmus from the waves, hurricane waves coming from either from the Atlantic, really, from the Atlantic side, and it protected it there. And I think that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, posterity will see this little isthmus cut away. It wouldn't take much to cut it away.
Indeed, indeed.
And it doesn't take much to protect it either. You just need to plant the trees and protect the trees, and the trees will grow there. That's what it was before. That's
indeed, indeed. Well, Brother Dave, I know that I may have detained you beyond that which we initially thought, but when we're enjoying each other's company and we're talking about botanic science, the time flies. So I just want to, in conclusion, Dave, I wish Sister Kerr was there so I could include her for a bit. I'm not sure how far she's gone, but I know we'll maybe get her on another occasion.
Another time, yeah.
Another
time. She was on one of your shows once.
Yes. Yeah. She certainly was, and she spoke quite well, and it's always a delight, a distinct delight to hear from her and have her contributions. But I'm asking from you for your permission, Brother Dave, to share your words of wisdom with our people on radio and online so that they can hear from somebody.
I'm quite happy about that, and I think that what you're doing there, bringing the insights that individuals like myself who have gone abroad and who have been trained in one way or another can contribute their training to the welfare of Dominica in some way or the other. But it's left to the Dominicans to be able to accept and encourage it so that the island itself can benefit.
Indeed, indeed. And Brother Dave, we certainly don't think, and I've always told people this, that when Dominicans are overseas, we cannot think about party. We have to think about country first, because all of us are Dominicans, and we all have to make our contributions. And I just want to thank you. In particular, I maybe need to ask that question. How important was the cadet spirit in its animating you and people like Raglan and Clayton to be dutiful to the country of our birth?
Well, I think that when we grew up and at the grammar school, there was an atmosphere of competitive performance, and the grammar school was, head and shoulders above the rest of the schools. That has changed right now. But it was the grammar schools boys that marched on the various holidays with the police force, the grammar school guys that were marching then, and we were quite proud of the role that we played. And that I suspect that seeing yourself in a positive environment, encouraged you to contribute towards that environment. And that stayed with you for your life. You're proud of the country, and you're proud of what you did. You're proud of how you performed, and you wanted to contribute that to the country. You got a feeling of attachment to your country. And no matter what happens, you still feel that softness for your environment. When I go to Dominica, I don't want to leave.
Yes, indeed. I just want to say that so many of the Academy's founders, Raglan Revere was a sergeant, you were CQMS, Clayton was a corporal or sergeant, Dr. Sam was I don't think he became a major in the US Army, but Dr. Andre was not a cadet, but he walks and talks like a cadet. And so many of the founders were cadets that I know that spirit of patriotic endeavor seasoned us. And We never think about anything but trying to do our best for Dominica and to give our love and our service to Dominica. And that's what, to me, is very inspirational about you and the others like you who have taken up the mantle of leadership and that exemplary performance, that competitiveness of saying that we are as good as anybody else, that we can do whatever our mind, and God gives us some mind to work in a way that's collaborative, that is nation building in an orientation, that we must continue that. And Dave, I tell you, I use your example of the arithmetic mean always being centered and purposeful with my son. So you've added to the circumference of my knowledge, and I'm passing it on to my son.
You know, another thing which is interesting too, it was that when you went through the system of education in Dominica, and you go to UWI and you do your work at UWI, you get to know that your performance is at international levels. Like in my case, or in a few other guys' case that got first grades and so on. They sent us, we saw the results from that India got, the results that Nigeria got, and we say, oh, we're as good as these guys from Nigeria and England, all over the place. So it enhanced our feeling of competitiveness. And when we went to college, we were as good as the other guys there. There's nothing that intimidated us. And that happens to lots of Dominicans. Most Dominicans are like that.
My friend, I'm smiling, Brother Dave, because I was at Georgetown University Law Center, which is the only law center on Capitol Hill. And once I answered the question in class, and some guy from Stanford or Yale said, Christian, where did you go to school? And I told him, he said, oh, you know.
And the same thing happened to me.
That's it.
I gave a lecture once, and a guy in my office came to me, and he told me, but Dave, you know, where are you from? You know, I said, well, Dominica. He said, where, you know, I had a map in my office showing the world map. I said, you know, you from that little island? So I said, well, what's the big deal? You know, that's, you know, there are lots of people from those little islands. So I asked him, well, he was sort of impressed by a guy like me delivering the lecture. You know, he thought I'd come from England or some big African place or something like that, you know. So I asked him, well, but he asked me, what's the population? I say about 80,000. You come from a small island like that? So I say, yeah, what's the big deal? So I said, but where are you from? He says, I come from Mendoza or someplace like that. I said, what's the population? He said, the population is 30,000. I said, you come from a small town like that? You look at me, he got your point, you know. You cannot assess an individual on the environment from which he came. He makes himself.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so your advice to young Dominicans, what are the sort of value engineering principles would you leave us with that could be inspirational?
My main, what has motivated me is, you know, working to the best of my ability, work hard, remember your community from where you came, contribute to that community, and life goes on and life will be good to you.
Indeed.
Hard and community.
Indeed.
Honesty and moral values and so on come without, you know, without asking, you know, you're expected to have these kind of values. But some of the critical ones that many of us don't have is the work ethic, man. And I use that all the time.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And my kids use it too.
Indeed, indeed. That is, you cannot get something for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, Brother Dave,
I was just thanking you for having me. How should I say it? Just keep talking and talking.
Well, Dave, on behalf of all of us who had the honor and privilege of having you be a leader in the Dominica Academy, and particular on the Botanic Gardens project website. I just want to say we thank you for your service. We want to thank Ms. Kerr for sharing us with you and for being the, if I can say, the power behind the throne, and for the children who also bring us great vicarious pleasure for knowing, you know, part of their roots reside in Dominica. We know the other parts reside in Jamaica, and Jamaica, of course, is very dear to us. I mean, you know, in this office, you know, the majority of West Indians who come here are Jamaicans. And we're very close to Jamaica. In fact, on Saturday, we'll be with the Jamaican community for their 61st anniversary of independence in Boston. And our friend Larry Sinders of Carib Nation TV will be honored. And he is covering Jamaica as well. So thank you, Brother Dave, and God bless you. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Same thing to you, man. Thanks. All the best.
All the best.